This is June 15th, 1971. We're still in the home of the Henry Noricks, and we're visiting with Mr. and Mrs. Jim Norick, formerly Mayor Jim Norick, who has served 2 terms as mayor and retired as mayor about 2 months ago. With James H. Norick and Madelyn, what was your maiden name?
King.
Madelyn King? King, Madelyn King Norick. Jim, to begin with, why don't you give a little bit about your family background, where you were born, who your parents were?
Well, I was born here in Oklahoma City. And my parents, Mr. Henry Norick and my mother Ruth, her maiden name was Coleman, came originally from Missouri. Dad was born over in the eastern part of the state around Stillwell. At the time, I think Cherokee Nation. He was, I think, about a 4th or an 8th Indian, I'm not sure, something like that. So I've got a little Indian blood in me, but I have 3 sisters, one older and 2 younger. Frances Lilly was born here in Oklahoma City. Dorothy Patton, just younger than I am, was born in Oklahoma City, and then my youngest sister, Marjorie, was born in Winoka. When you interviewed Dad, he was talking about the printing business and the development of the accounting systems. And when they got going pretty good on that situation, my Uncle Lon and Dad thought it might be a good idea to get in on some of the cream, and so they bought a Ford dealership in Winoka, Oklahoma, and had that for about 5 years, and Dad went up to run the Ford agency, and my uncle stayed here in Oklahoma City to run the printing business, and that's where my youngest sister Marjorie was born at that time. We were there about 5 years, and principally wheat land up in there and sand hills, and the farming crops weren't too good, and so after 5 years, Dad was able to bail out, and he says he just about broke even, but we don't know for sure. But anyhow, we came back and of course went into back into the printing business here. My education, the first 3 years was in Winoka, and then of course when we got back to Oklahoma City, I finished my grade school at Putnam Heights, Harding Junior High, and Classen Senior High. It's been a rewarding life so far. Of course, I've been in the printing business since I got out of school. In fact, even before I got out of school, I used to go down and I thought I was helping. Perhaps I was bothering them more as I was helping, but at least I enjoyed it.
You attended school at OMA, is that correct? Oklahoma Military Academy.
Yes, I went there in the fall of 38, 2-year junior college, and graduated in May of 40.
Why don't you tell us a little about Oklahoma Military Academy at that time?
Well, back at that time, as I recall, it seemed like there was somewhere in the neighborhood of around 600 cadets. They had the ROTC. After 4 years of the military training, the graduates, now that would require, of course, that they would be 2 years of high school and then 2 years of junior college. Then they would be graduated with a 2nd lieutenant in the Army. Or the cavalry, actually, is what it was, because we had horses. That was the horse cavalry at that time. I went 2 years to junior college. Then after, just about the time I got out of school, I got married and went to work at $15 a week. And so I didn't go ahead and complete the college education. I've learned through the experience of hard knocks, I guess you'd say.
You received an honor later from OMA. Could you tell about that?
Yes. Fortunately, while I was in my first term as the mayor here, the Oklahoma Military Academy Alumni Association decided that it would be well perhaps to have a Hall of Fame. And that was about 10 or 11 years ago, somewhere in the early 60s. And I was fortunate enough to be one of the first 5 members of the Hall of Fame of the Oklahoma Military Academy.
You remember who the other 4 were?
Dale Robertson was one, and I don't recall who the other 3 were.
Mm-hmm. Who was the commandant at that time?
Ledbetter was the commandant, Colonel Ledbetter, at the time that I was in school.
Could you tell something about him?
Oh, not a great amount. He seemed to be a pretty fine gentleman, and at the same time, one of his sons was a cadet there at the school and was in the school at the same time I was. I might mention, too, that the present commander of the Oklahoma Military Academy, and has been for the last couple of years, is John Horn, who is retired from the Air Force, and he was the cadet commander when I was at OMA back in 38 and 39, and he is the first graduate of Oklahoma Military Academy who has returned as the commandant of the school.
Do you have any comments on their recent move towards coeducation? I saw some girls when we were up there interviewing about a month ago.
Well, of course, you always saw girls around, but
they were in class, though.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, of course, that Oklahoma Military Academy has not been able to make a go of it, I guess, so to speak, and perhaps it's as much my fault as anyone else in not being able to encourage young men to go to the school up there for their training. It's good training. It teaches you to take orders, which until you learn to take them, of course, it's very difficult to give orders. But I think it's good training, and a lot of people perhaps look on it as a kind of a reform school, but it really isn't. It's good training, even though at the time there were several times I didn't particularly care for it, but it is good training.
Now, you were in the Navy, weren't you, rather than the Army?
Yeah, I always say that after I got through with OMA, I had my taste of the Army, so I tried the Navy during the war.
Where'd you serve?
I went in to active duty in September, on September 1st of 1942, and served 16 months at Norman at the South Base. That was the time when they organized in the South Base and the North Base at Norman. And after that, well, they caught up with us ship company boys, as they say, and I went aboard a fleet tug, helped put it in commission over in Charleston, South Carolina, and from there went out to the South Pacific, and after the war was over, about some 2 years later, I got back home.
Tell a little bit about your background with the Norick Company and a little bit about its development during your period with it.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, while I was in school, of course, I'd go down and work Saturdays, and then in the summertime, that was when I was in junior and senior high school, and started actually in the shipping department, helping wrap packages and go with the guy to the post office to put the parcel post at the post office, make deliveries around in town, and just generally grew up into the business. Actually got into it, I guess you'd say, full time when I got out of school and was married and started working in the office. I've done about everything around the printing plant, I guess you'd say, and it's just kind of grown up in the business. In 1953, back before that, actually, it was about 1946 or 47, Dad sold to my three sisters and I a share of the business, at which time it was a partnership. And then in 1953, we formed a corporation, having the same percentage as far as the corporation as we did have in the partnership. And it's still the same corporation. It's been quite a growth period. I might mention, back Dad was talking about the development of the accounting systems, starting actually back around 1917. Primarily, they started contacting dealers, Ford dealers in Oklahoma and Texas through the mails. When they began to get some response on it back in the late teens and early 20s, they decided that they had perhaps something they were looking for, and so they hired some accountants who actually went out and traveled Oklahoma and Texas and helped the dealers. They would sell them the system and then help them install the system and get it to working for them. So it's been quite a growth. I don't know how many employees they might have had back in about 1920, but at the present time, well, we've got about 220. So it's a pretty good growth, I think, for a family-owned corporation.
You moved to 4th Street what year? Do you remember that?
The building on 4th Street was constructed in 1928. In 1941, there was an expansion. In 1946, there was another expansion. In 1951, a new building was constructed back across the alley at 5th and Lee. It was just about double the square footage. And then in 1959, the building where we're located now on West 36th Street was constructed, and we're just about to the point now where we're bulging at the seams. So I would say that probably in the next 2 or 3 years, well, we're going to have to do something.
You and I first became acquainted back in the JCs, and you were quite active in JCs as an officer. Why don't you tell a little bit about the JCs during your period of activity there?
Well, as you mentioned, we were, I was active, I guess, from early 46, shortly after I got back out of the service. Became active in the JCs until the late 50, about August of 1950. And during that time, the Oklahoma City chapter, junior chamber, was one of the largest, if not the largest, in the country. I think at that time, if I recall correctly, we had somewhere around 1,500 members. And our chapter won the highest award given to the JC chapter.
Marks Award.
Yes, the Marks Award, 2 times in a row. As I recall, it was in 46 and 47, I believe. And so I always think I helped a little bit. I know we had a very successful membership drive in 46, where we really sold the people on the Junior Chamber of Commerce here in Oklahoma City.
Madam, we're breaking in here. I believe that in 1949, you were president of the J.C. James, weren't you? Isn't that correct?
Yes.
Why don't you tell a little bit about the activity of the J.C. James during that period, and including your period as president and the other period when you were active?
Well, Jimmy just mentioned the membership drive. I know the J.C. James were very much involved in it. Not only the J.C.'s went out and sold memberships, but the J.C. Janes helped their husbands by going out and selling memberships too. So I think that helped put them over the top and make them national acclaim from that. The J.C. Janes was started here in Oklahoma City. The name was started here in Oklahoma City. Jimmy's secretary right now to this day, Glenda Phelps, was a past president, and she was one of the ones that helped name the J.C. Janes. And it was at one time just a J.C. Auxiliary, and then they changed it to J.C. James, and now it's that all over the United States, I believe. We had our main projects in this auxiliary organization was to help our husbands. I know they had the stock auctions that we were always very much involved in by helping serve food, and we just helped them in most anything they did. It was really lots of fun. We thoroughly enjoyed it.
Your first race for city council was about 1951 or 2, isn't that correct?
Yeah, it was 1951.
Why don't you tell about that race?
Well, that was rather unique because I had never been in politics. I had been quite active in the junior chamber for some 4.5 years and decided that it was getting to take quite a bit of time, and probably I should devote more time to the printing business, and so I became pretty inactive as far as the junior chamber was concerned. And the last day of filing for the city council post, the superintendent of our plant needled me on a Friday morning and said, "Why don't you enter the race for city council?" The Jack Rainbow, as a matter of fact, and he's still with us. And I always blame him for my getting involved in politics, but I went down and filed, and that was about noon of Friday, the last day for filing. The campaign was run from our home. A very dear, close friend of ours, Clark Horton, who is here in town. He and his wife, Chris, and Madelyn and I spent many long hours at night addressing envelopes and mailing to the prospective voters in hopes that they would vote for me. The turning point, I think.
Let's turn over. Well, we're talking about turning point. Let's turn the tape over. Go ahead again.
The turning point on the race in 1951 when I ran for city council. On the primary, there was some, I don't know, 8, 10, 12 fellows that were running. I managed to get into the runoff, that is the second high. Mr. Earl Miller, who was the present city council councilman from Ward 1, running for a re-election, was a very close friend of Mr. E.K. Gaylord. He received about 43% of the total votes cast, but since he didn't have the majority, of course, there was a runoff. And I mentioned the turning point. I think really what helped most was a front-page editorial that Mr. Gaylord wrote just before the runoff election, suggesting that I should save the taxpayers of Oklahoma City about $5,000 in cost for holding the runoff election. I should withdraw in favor of Mr. Miller. Well, that made quite a number of people unhappy, I guess. I know I received quite a number of telephone calls, communications from people whom I did not even know. They said, "We don't know you, but stick in there and fight. We don't think that's right." And consequently, I was elected to a 4-year term on the city council.
Tell about who the other members of the city council were, and possibly tell us something about these people, who their background and that sort of thing. Who was the mayor at that time, and then we will go a little bit into what the major issues were during that first term. Begin with your associates.
At that time, we had 4 wards in Oklahoma City. Walter Harrison was the other representative from Ward 1. In Ward 2, and I think Dr. A.M. Brewer was on at that time. Coxey Stark and Harlow Gears from the Capitol Hill area. Leonard Dickerson, Laverne Carlton, and at one time or other, John Connor, or O'Connor, I can't recall now, it's been a few years ago, was on the city council. One of the main things that came up back at that time, actually in the latter part of my tenure on the city council, incidentally, Allen Street was the mayor. That was his second term as mayor. But we had the proposition that Oklahoma City in the future was going to need water. And through a bond issue, which was passed during that time, we purchased the land in which is now Lake Atoka, and started the procedure of the construction, or the beginning of the construction of the lake at Atoka. And that was done just shortly before. In fact, it was early '55, just before I went off the city council. So I think that was probably one of the most significant things that happened then, which we in Oklahoma City now are certainly grateful that we had it.
Wasn't the library built during that term?
Yes, a new library was constructed at 3rd and Robinson. Of course, now the main branch just about is out at the Belle Isle, which was constructed. I guess that one was constructed during my first term as mayor.
Talk a little about the Atoka water thing. Of course, there were various disputes and other things during this period. Would you discuss that? Yeah,
actually, the lake was built, as I say, start construction around 1955, and it was completed. The completion, I recall, it was shortly after I went into office in '59. I think it was June 1st, 2nd, or 9th, somewhere in that neighborhood of 1959 was the formal dedication of the dam at such time that the water began to gather into the lake. And as I recall, it was to take some 3-4 years to fill, and I think in less than 2 years while it was completely filled up. Well, of course, once we had the lake, it was necessary that we get the water to Oklahoma City. So a pipeline was constructed 100 miles long, a 60-inch pipe to pump the water uphill from Atoka to Oklahoma City. Atoka is about 550 feet elevation roughly, and Oklahoma City is around 1150. So we had about 600 feet the water to be pumped uphill in order to pump it into Lake Stanley Draper, which is south of Tinker Field. Back at that time, when the Atoka project was getting started, Bill Gill, who is in the construction business here, along with some other gentlemen, put together a package and brought it to the city, and they said, for $55 million, we will build you a water line, the necessary pumps, I think 6 pumping stations, construct that, and so that you will get your water from Atoka to Draper Lake. Well, there was a bunch of hoorah and et cetera, and anyhow we had a lot of problems. People said, well, why don't you put it out competitive bid, this, that, and the other, and so forth. About a year later, after so much wrangling back and forth, it was put out for competitive bidding, and instead of $55 million, it cost $63 million to construct. I might say that originally it was a 48-inch line. It was changed to a 60-inch, which would make a difference of some $3 million, but I still think that the first proposition was a good one, and I think that it cost Oklahoma City probably an additional $5 million. Of course, we've got the water, and that's fine, and it was done competitive bidding, so that's, I guess, satisfies everybody. But there were about 3 or 4 of the council. I remember Coxey Stark was one. I'm trying to think who the others were that ran for re-election shortly thereafter and were defeated, and I think primarily L.J. Wilkes was one of them that ran for re-election and were defeated primarily because of the unrest of this Atoka Water project. And of course, at the time I said, well, 5 years from now, I'm sure that everyone in Oklahoma City will be very delighted that we have that water, and I think it's worked that way.
You had, well, let's see, can you think of anything else, getting a little more into the personalities of the people? I'm thinking in particular of those who played most key roles. I think one example would be Walter Harrison. Why don't you discuss Walter Harrison a little bit?
Well, yes, I always respected Walter Harrison. I think he was one of the most intelligent, well-read men that perhaps has ever served on the city council, or even been in Oklahoma City, I guess you might say. But he and I were more than once by ourselves on the city council when the vote would be taken. Well, it would be a 6-2 situation. I think probably a lot of people would call him radical, but he had a very fine mind and could ferret out situations. But I think he was probably one of the most colorful people that we've ever had on the city council. And of course, I didn't always agree with him, but as I say, in a lot of cases, why he and I were on one side and the rest of them were on the other. But we were voting, and as far as I'm personally concerned, I was merely voting the way that I thought that it should be done, and certainly I'm sure that everybody else was too.
Can you think of any other personalities on there that might be worth talking about a little bit from the maybe not just from a political standpoint, but also from a personality standpoint?
Well, I think Leonard Dickerson, at that time, he had been on the city council, I think, some 12 or maybe even 16 years. I'm not sure, but anyhow, he'd been on there for quite a number of years, and he is one of the men in Oklahoma City that constructed very many parking lots in the downtown area. A lot of people used to ridicule and think that he was doing something that wasn't quite right because he had so many parking lots and so forth, but that was his business. And as far as I know, all of it was legitimate. So I think he's one of the people on of the city, in spite of being on the city council, that actually helped the merchants downtown by investing the money to construct these various parking lots around the downtown area so people could come down and have a place to park and shop at the downtown stores.
Let's talk about Allen Street.
Well, I think Allen Street was probably one of the finest gentlemen that I have ever known. He had, as I say, when I was on the city council, he was in his second 4-year term as mayor. He, for many years, of course, had been a leader in civic projects. I think even in the 30s he served on the legislature out at the State House. But apparently he'd been kind of a politician all his life, I guess. But he was very dedicated individual, and I certainly got along with him very well. He always tried to help me if I had a question or something to discuss along the city line. Why, he was always very delighted to try and help answer and help me work out the problem. The reason I did run, incidentally, in '59, the first time for the mayor position, was because Allen Street was not going to run again. That's the only reason.
This is one I'll throw out that you may or may not recall something, but do you recall any particular event or occurrence or small happening dealing with, say, Allen Street or with Walter Harrison or others something that happened, small or big, that might give some insight into the personality or the character of the individual?
Well, gee, I don't know. Trying to think back, I know Walter Harrison was with the Oklahoma Publishing Company for quite a number of years. He went away during the Second World War, and when he came back, he was with him for a while, and then I don't know whether he quit or they fired him, but at any rate, there was no love lost between Walter and the Oklahoma Publishing Company, and I know that I can recall that when I was serving with him on the city council, each year when the Oklahoma Publishing Company would have their stockholders meeting, which happened to be on Tuesday morning at 10 o'clock, and our council meeting started at 9, he would be there until about 9:45, and then he went to that stockholders meeting because I think he held a pretty good sizable chunk of stock in Oklahoma Publishing, and that was his one day of the year that he could go up and tell them what he thought. But in order for him to get back at them, well, I was going to mention that since the Oklahoma Publishing Company could have their editorials in their paper and say what they wanted to and all, and you might say he had no rebuttal, he bought the little paper out in the Britain area, named it the North Star, and that was his rebuttal. He just put in there and said anything he wanted to. I think it cost him money, but at least he got to put in print what he wanted to.
How about your first race for mayor?
I decided to run for the mayor's position, and at the time, Charlie Burbo, who had served 2 years on the city council, also filed. Merton Bulla, who's a local attorney here, and several others. I recall there was about 16 of us that were in the race. After the primary, Charlie Burbo was in the lead. Merton Bulla was behind him, and I was a close third. In fact, between myself and Charlie Burbo, I think there was less than 100 votes difference. And I asked for a recount, primarily. At that time, of course, we had paper ballots, no machines. And I could just visualize that Bulla and Burba, names being so similar, that perhaps in the counting of the ballots, that some of the ballots or some of the names or votes could have been recorded improperly. So we spent a week down at the county election board recounting and rechecking all of the ballots that had been cast. And I was, as I recall, I think 62 votes behind Mr. Bulla in third place. And at the end of the recount, I was one vote ahead of Mr. Bulla. Gained the runoff with Charlie Burba, and of course with the week's publicity during the recount, the newspaper publicity, radio, TV, everything, you know, everybody was interested. You can't buy that kind of advertising. So fortunately, I was elected by actually the largest vote that has ever been cast in a city election in Oklahoma City. I might say that there might be one reason why there were close to 100,000 votes cast was, or maybe even more than that, was because at the same time the proposition was put to the vote of the people that whether or not to have liquor legalized in Oklahoma. So I'd like to say that it was me running for mayor that pulled all those people out, but I'm afraid it wasn't.
Well, I claim to be the guy who elected you with that one vote in that first round. During your first term as mayor, there was quite a division of the city council, probably as much of a near a split division as we've had in feeling. Could you tell a little about that and what who were in the two basic factions that were involved there?
Oh, it's hard to say. I know when I first went in as mayor, there was some dissension. Of course, Charlie Burba had run for the position. He was still to serve 2 years on the city council. Wayne Spiegel was a new member of the council, and gosh, I can't recall who all. L.J. Wilkes was on there at the time. I think Laverne Carlton. I can't recall all of the numbers. I know that I had a kind of a bad situation in that I, as mayor, thought that I was supposed to appoint various members to the, for instance, Planning Commission, Traffic Commission, the various commissions of the city. I found out that I was merely suggest a name and the council would either approve or not, which is, you might say, what the present mayor is finding out too. But there was some dissension on that, and as a matter of fact, I think it's rather interesting. Just a couple of months after I'd been in office, there was to be a replacement on the Planning Commission. I suggested someone which wasn't agreeable. Mr. Wayne Spiegel suggested none other than Bill Bishop, who is now in his second term on the city council and actually ran for mayor this spring. And I didn't know Bill at the time, and so I elected not to suggest his name. Well, I attended the Conference of Mayors meeting in Los Angeles in June of that year, and while I was gone, the council appointed, or the vice mayor appointed, and the council approved the new appointment. So, of course, I'm a very close personal friend of Bill Bishop's, and
one of his strong campaigners.
Well, that's right. We tried to do all we could to help him.
Following your first term, I know that this ARG was appointed, which I'm sure that you probably are not in sympathy with. I would not have been either, I'm sure, in your case. But I wonder if you would tell a little about your second election and about the organization of the ARG and what it was. You can express your opinion, whatever you may have on it, too.
Yes, the ARG, or Association for Responsible Government, was formed by a group of people in Oklahoma City in I'd say probably late 62, because the election was held in the spring of 63. It was made up by a group of people in Oklahoma City, and the thoughts were that they would select a person to run for mayor, to run for the 4 council seats that were up for election at that time, as a slate. And so they actually approached me. I was running for re-election to sort of visit with me to see whether or not they would make me their choice. And after visiting with them for a while, and some of the people that, in my opinion, perhaps did not have the true good of Oklahoma City, actually was what they were working for. In other words, I felt like some of them perhaps might have had ulterior motives. I elected not to be their candidate and run on my own as an independent for re-election. I might mention that J. Edgar Hoover wrote a book which was published back in 1956, and in that, called The Masters of Deceit, there's a chapter 16, I believe it is 16 and 17, which at that time we knew about, and it sounded an awful lot, or very similar to ARG as far as we were concerned, and that's why Madelyn and I both were very, very apprehensive about this group of people. I think that most of them in the organization, as far as that's concerned, thought they were doing the right thing, but of course it only takes two or three to lead, and you could be going off on the wrong slant. But to go further, then in 1965, they were still active and were able to elect. Incidentally, they elected the mayor and 4 council positions in that 63 election. In 65, they elected 3 positions. They were not able to elect one out in the Capitol Hill area. And then in 67, when I ran again, because no one was coming forth, in my opinion, to run for the mayor's position, which I felt was, of course, I'm judging people, but perhaps I shouldn't, but it didn't look like anyone was coming forth other than the ARG candidate to run for the mayor's position, so I just decided to try it again, and fortunately I was elected, defeated their candidate, and I think they elected 2 of the 4 council positions at that time. So from then, since then, unless they've been working underground, so to speak, they haven't been successful.
Thinking in terms of your first 4 years as mayor, we talked a little about personalities involved, but what were the issues, the principal issues at that time?
Well, I think probably one of the main ones, and it was started in late '58 before I was elected as to the mayor in '59, but was the annexation program, which Oklahoma City grew from, I think it was about 140 square miles to our present size of around 650 square miles. That was done mostly in 1959 and a little bit of it in early '60. But we grew from a small city in just about a year's time there to the largest I always said in the world. I'm not sure about that, but I definitely know we were the largest in the United States. And of course there was a lot of controversy on that. Some people wanted to be in the city, some people didn't want to be in the city, but due to annexation laws, and I know that some of the people were even upset enough about it that they tried to get the legislature to change the annexation laws or try to make Oklahoma City look like a bugaboo. But I think it has paid off since that time because of the orderly development of Oklahoma City, and that's primarily what we were looking to, is so that if you build a nice home here, well, you know that next door to you is not going to be a junk heap. If it's properly zoned, why, you know that you're going to be protected, and that's of course the main purpose. And actually, I think our Will Rogers World Airport today is the fine facility and has the capability of much expansion as a result of our annexation, because since all of that area around the airport has become a part of Oklahoma City, there's been numerous times that the Planning Commission and the Council have turned down requests by various people who wanted to do something with their land. You might say you feel sorry for them if they own the land. Why can't they do what they want to with it? But on the other hand, if people would do just what they want to do with their land, then it'd be a pretty sad state of affairs. And I'm afraid that Will Rogers Field right now would be in the same position that perhaps Love Field is in Dallas or Midway is in Chicago. They're completely surrounded. Very difficult for the airports to function properly.
Putting things into perspective, those years we're talking about there were 1959 to 1963, isn't that correct?
That's correct.
Now let's talk about your second term as mayor, and that would be 1966 to 1970.
67, 71.
67 to 1971. Let's take the principal issues, official issues during this period of time. After that, we're going to swing back into some of the unofficial duties.
Well, I think probably one of the most important things that has happened in the second term, or my second time in the mayor's office, is the approximately $115 million bond issue, which was passed in 1968 for capital improvements for Oklahoma City. It was originally, the vote was held on that in, I believe it was April of 68. Only the fire station part of that passed, and so it was decided to run it back through again in, I believe it was June. It so happened that Madelyn and I had a trip to Hawaii with the shrine, which we were looking forward to. I was coerced, I guess you'd say, into being the chairman or co-chairman on that bond drive, which meant that, of course, we could not go to Hawaii. I elected to do that, and it was a little frigid around home, but we were successful in getting everything passed except improvements to the fairgrounds, which was a small part of the bond issue. So I think that that's probably one of the most important things, actually, for the growth of Oklahoma City that has happened in this second term that I was in the mayor's office.
Can you think of any other thing during this second period that might be worth mentioning?
Yes, I can, and actually it happened just right after I went on to the council. In fact, it was developing before I went into office in April of 67. We have the Broadway extension, so-called, which goes from North 36th Street north to Britton Road. About January of that year, the county commissioners were trying to put together a package to build a toll road from 36th and Robinson south to connect into, in other words, down through the downtown area, and to connect into Interstate 40, which runs east and west just immediately south of downtown. It looked like a good deal as far as I was concerned, and a couple of other members on the city council. The only way that the county could do such a project would be for the city council to give them permission to build a toll road inside the city limits of Oklahoma City. We couldn't, the other two or three gentlemen and myself couldn't get any of the others to go along with us. So after wrangling around with it for some 3 or 4 months, trying to either get a county deal, a city deal, or a combination city-county toll road, it was finally decided that we weren't going to be able to do that, and so with the help of Hubert Gregg, I appeared before the Highway Commission at the Capitol, and in hopes that the Highway Commission would form an authority to build a toll road in Oklahoma City. We thought we had it working, but a certain gentleman in Oklahoma City made a quick call to the governor's office about 30 minutes before that meeting and squelched that deal. So it was finally turned over then, sometime later. The authority, the Turnpike Authority of the state, was given permission by Oklahoma City to build a toll road in Oklahoma City from North 36th Street to connect in with I-35 and I-40, if they could find it feasible and could build and construct. At the present time, it's still in the planning and talking stage. Whether or not it will ever be done, I don't know. I understand the present governor thinks that they might be able to work some way to get it put in as a so-called free road, but we'll just have to wait and see.
As mayor, you have, of course, two principal jobs. One is to preside over the council, but the other one, which is almost equally important, is the unofficial portion of the job, which includes your wife, Madelyn, as well as yourself. So in this area, I'm going to be asking both of you to comment. And this is a job as more or less the official host for Oklahoma City, particularly for the most distinguished official visitors who come here and those whose position would require none less than the personal attention of the mayor and his wife. So let's think, and we can just pass this back between the two of you on some of the people, thinking in terms of your first term as mayor, 1959 to 1963. What are some of the unofficial duties that you felt were the most interesting or perhaps the most significant for Oklahoma City? Either one of you want to?
It would, I guess, as it being unofficial, it's a rather interesting thing that about 3:30 one morning, the telephone rang. I think this was probably about 1960, and Madelyn answered the phone, sleepily, of course, and somebody was asking for the Mayor James Norick of Oklahoma City. And I got on the phone, and it was a lady from Honolulu, and it seemed that periodically, while she would maybe have a little party and get to feeling pretty good, and it was her main hobby was to place calls to various mayors in the various cities in the United States on the mainland and just visit with them. I had about a 15-minute conversation with this Mrs. Johnson, and it was very enlightening, but she kept asking me periodically, why did I call you? Or why did I call her? And I hadn't placed the call. Well, I'll let Madelyn tell you what her concern was after I finally told her. I said, well, Mrs. Johnson, I'm going to hang up, and I did. So, Steve, what would you tell them the interesting part, too?
Well, I got to thinking about this the next morning and realizing that I had answered the phone, that maybe I had accepted a collect call, not knowing in the middle of the night, you know exactly what you say when you do answer the phone. So I called the operator in Oklahoma City to ask her if she could trace this, and she said, oh, well, certainly she'd call Honolulu. So she called Honolulu, and apparently she called me back in a little bit and gave me all the information. I guess the operators over there find this quite interesting and can tell us exactly what Mrs. Johnson says on all these calls, because she said that quite often she does this, and that particular night she had called 12 mayors in the United States. So we were very lucky to be on her list, but we had not accepted a collect call. Said she's a very wealthy person, and she pays her bills, and they really do not know whether she knows them or not, and so there's nothing they can do but place the call.
They probably prize her as one of their best customers.
Yes, I imagine they do. It was quite an interesting evening.
Do you often get calls late at night, isn't it?
Quite a number of them. Some people really don't care what time it is, but generally the late calls that would come in after, you'd say 11 or 11:30 at night. In most cases, it was someone that had been picked up and was down at the local hoosgow, and they're allowed one telephone call, and so they'd call the mayor.
They were the one who cast that one vote for you.
Yes. And you mentioned that one vote a while ago, Penn, that you were the one that did it. I wish that I would have thought at the time to make notes of all of the various stories and things that were related to me as to why I received that one vote. I think it would make a very, very interesting book, and I'm just sorry that I didn't make notes about it. I might say one of the nicest experiences I think that Madelyn and I had during the first term as mayor was about in 1960. We had the opportunity of...
Now, was this 60 or 50? You said first term.
Well, the first term as mayor was 59 to 63. So it was about 1960 or 61. We were in Washington, D.C. President Eisenhower was in the White House at the time as president. Bryce Harlow was, as you probably recall, one of his speechwriters and one of his aides. We contacted Bryce and were able to get a tour of the White House, not the usual tour that all citizens of the country can have, but we met Bryce over there at about noon. We had lunch in the president's mess in the lower part of the White House, and then we got an all-afternoon tour, really, of the White House with Bryce Harlow and the main security guard. We got to see many of the things that the ordinary citizen doesn't get to see, and it was one of the outstanding things, I think, that happened. Madelyn, I think, might even add, because these women know a little more about these house things than the fellas do. And Madelyn, I think, might even add, because these women know a little more about these house things than the fellas do. And Madelyn, I think, might even add, because these women know a little more about these house things than the fellas do. And Madelyn, I think, might even add, because these women know a little more about these house things than the fellas do. And Madelyn, I think, might even add, because these women know a little more about these house things than the fellas do. And Madelyn, I think, might even add, because these women know a little more about these house things.